Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and with your permission, I'd like to make a statement regarding the latest developments on Hong Kong. As I feared when I addressed the House on the 2nd of June, yesterday the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress in Beijing adopted a wide-ranging national security law for Hong Kong. This is a grave and deeply disturbing step. We've carefully assessed the legislation, and in particular, we've considered its impact on the rights, freedoms, and critically, the high degree of autonomy bestowed on Hong Kong under China's basic law for Hong Kong, as well as under the Joint Declaration, which, as the House will know, is the treaty agreed between China and the UK in 1984. So, Mr. Speaker, today I have the depressing but necessary duty to report to the House that the enactment of this legislation imposed by the authorities in Beijing on the people of Hong Kong constitutes a clear and serious breach of the Joint Declaration. Let me explain to the House the grounds for this sobering conclusion. First, Mr. Speaker, the legislation violates the high degree of autonomy, executive and legislative powers, and independent judicial authority provided for in paragraph 3 of the Joint Declaration. The imposition of this legislation by the government in Beijing, rather than it being left to Hong Kong's own institutions, is also, it should be noted, in direct conflict with Article 23 of China's own basic law for Hong Kong, which affirms that Hong Kong should bring forward its own national security legislation. In fact, the basic law elaborates on this and only allows Beijing to directly impose laws in a very limited number of cases, such as for the purposes of defence, foreign affairs, or in exceptional circumstances in which the National People's Congress declares a state of war or a state of emergency. None of those exceptions apply here, nor has the National People's Congress sought to justify this law on any such ground. Second, Mr. Speaker, the national security legislation contains a slew of measures that directly threaten the freedoms and rights protected by the Joint Declaration. In this respect, the House will be particularly concerned by the potentially wide-ranging ability of the mainland authorities to take jurisdiction over certain cases without any independent oversight and to try those cases in Chinese courts. This measure violates paragraph 3, subparagraph 3 and 5 of the Joint Declaration and directly threatens the rights contained in the UN International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which under the Joint Declaration are to be protected in Hong Kong. And I think in particular it's worth saying that those measures represent a flagrant assault on freedom of speech and freedom of peaceful protest for the people of Hong Kong. Third, Mr. Speaker, the legislation provides that Hong Kong's chief executive, rather than the Chief Justice, will appoint judges to hear national security cases, a move that clearly risks undermining the independence of Hong Kong's judiciary, again which is protected by paragraph 3, subparagraph 3 of the Joint Declaration. Fourth, Mr. Speaker, the legislation provides for the establishment by the Chinese government of a new Office for Safeguarding National Security in Hong Kong, run by and reporting to the mainland authorities. That is particularly worrying, Mr. Speaker, because that office is given wide-ranging powers, directly intruding on the responsibility of the Hong Kong authorities to maintain public order, again directly in breach of the Joint Declaration, this time paragraph 3, subparagraph 11. Mr. Speaker, the authorities in Hong Kong have already started to enforce this legislation, with reports of arrests by the police and official notices warning the people of Hong Kong against waving flags or chanting. In sum, Mr. Speaker, this legislation has been enacted, as I said, in clear and serious breach of the Joint Declaration. China has broken its promise to the people of Hong Kong under its own laws. China has breached its international obligations to the United Kingdom under the Joint Declaration. And it's also worth saying, Mr. Speaker, that having committed to apply the UN's International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights to the people of Hong Kong, China has now written into law wide-ranging exemptions which cannot credibly be reconciled with its international obligations or indeed its responsibilities as a leading member of the international community. Mr. Speaker, we want a positive relationship with China. We recognise its growth, its stature, and the powerful role it can play in the world. And I would say it is precisely because we respect China as a leading member of the international community, that we expect the Chinese government to meet its international obligations to live up to its international responsibilities. It has failed to do so with respect to Hong Kong by enacting legislation which violates its autonomy and threatens the strangulation of its freedoms. It is a sad day for the people of Hong Kong, and one which can only undermine international trust in the Chinese government's willingness to keep its word and live up to its promises. For our part, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister and the government are crystal clear. The United Kingdom will keep its word. We will live up to our responsibilities to the people of Hong Kong. And I can tell the House that after further detailed discussions with my right honourable friend, the Home Secretary, I can now confirm we will proceed to honour our commitment to change the arrangements for those holding BNO status. And I can update honourable members that we have worked with ministers right across Whitehall, and we have now developed proposals for a bespoke immigration route for BNOs and their dependents. We will grant BNOs 5 years limited leave to remain with the right to work or study. After these 5 years, they'll be able to apply for settled status. And after a further 12 months with settled status, they will be able to apply for citizenship. This is a special, bespoke set of arrangements developed for the unique circumstances we faced and in light of our historic commitment to the people of Hong Kong. All of those with BNO status will be eligible, as will their family dependents who are usually resident in Hong Kong, and the Home Office will put in place a simple, streamlined application process, and I can reassure honourable members there will be no quotas on numbers. I want to pay tribute to the Home Secretary and her excellent team at the Home Office for their work and help in preparing, let's face it, for a moment that we all dearly hoped would not arrive. And the Home Secretary will set out further details of our approach in due course. Mr. Speaker, in addition to changing the arrangements for BNOs, the UK will continue to work with our international partners to consider what further action we should responsibly take next. And I can tell the House that yesterday in the United Nations Human Rights Council, the UK made a formal joint statement expressing our deep concern about the human rights situation in both Hong Kong and Xinjiang. Mr. Speaker, 26 other nations joined that statement, and this was the first time a formal statement has been made at the Human Rights Council on this issue, and it was delivered through our diplomatic leadership. We will continue to work with our partners in the G7, partners in the EU, and our partners across the region. So, Mr. Speaker, I'd say again that we want a positive relationship with China, but we will not look the other way when it comes to Hong Kong, and we will not duck our historic responsibilities to its people. We will continue to bring together our international partners, to stand up for the people of Hong Kong, to call out the violations of their freedoms, to hold China to its international obligations freely assumed under international law, and I commend this statement to the House.
Shadow Foreign Secretary Lisa Nandy.
Mr. Speaker, the new security law is deeply shocking, and the arrests overnight have stunned the world. This will have a chilling effect on democracy. It fundamentally undermines the commitments made by the Chinese government to the United Kingdom, and in turn the commitments that we made to the people of Hong Kong when we signed the joint declaration. I pressed the Foreign Secretary yesterday not to waver in his commitment to the people of Hong Kong, and I am grateful to him for coming to the House today to make this statement, for advance sight of it, and most of all to honour the promise that he made on the 2nd of June. He is right to do so, and he has our support. Can he tell us when the Home Secretary will provide details of the scheme for BNO passport holders and dependents, and has he made an assessment of likely take-up? Will salary thresholds apply? We are concerned that this must not become a scheme simply for wealthy Hong Kongers to abandon the city and leave others behind. Under the national security law, the government can extract money from those they believe to be involved in criminality or guilty of offences. In some cases, the people of Hong Kong will not be able to take sums of money out of the city. They could have their bank accounts frozen. So what recourse to public funds will apply, and will he ensure that dependents will be treated as home students for the purpose of tuition fees? Mr. Speaker, his commitment to BNO passport holders is welcome, but it does not resolve the problem. I was deeply moved to see the young activists who bravely took to the streets to protest against this law at considerable personal risk. The majority of them will not be covered by this scheme. They must not be abandoned. The loss of many highly skilled workers will be a blow to Hong Kong as well as to China. That is why we need additional measures. We've been waiting in this House for Magnitsky legislation for 2 years now. He must give us a date when that will be brought forward before the summer recess so that targeted sanctions can be applied to those who breach human rights in Hong Kong. Overnight, Mr. Speaker, pepper spray and water cannons were used against the pro-democracy protesters. It is now time for Britain to lead on an inquiry into police brutality. Can I welcome the cross-regional statement that our ambassador coordinated and place on record my thanks to him for his efforts? But will the Foreign Secretary now lead the charge for the appointment of a UN Special Rapporteur on Hong Kong? The provisions in the national security law that encourage people to confess and disclose others' so-called criminal behaviour have raised serious concerns about the prospect of torture. We must not turn away. What conversations has he had with Carrie Lam about the provision for the Chief Executive to handpick judges? And given the comments by the former Hong Kong Chief Justice Andrew Lee that this will fundamentally undermine the independence of the judiciary, what assessment has he made of the continuing role of British judges in the court system? Mr. Speaker, I wrote to him some time ago to ask him to address the direct challenge made by British companies like HSBC and Standard Chartered to the UK's stance by supporting this law. We cannot allow British businesses to become complicit in undermining the international rules-based order that they themselves rely on. Yesterday, he spoke up in defence of press freedom in this place. What discussions is he having with UK news agencies to defend their ability to continue to report freely on the situation on the ground, and with NGOs who will be deeply concerned that this law applies anywhere in the world? Mr. Speaker, the government has taken a step forward today with the announcement of new rights for BNO passport holders and a statement at the United Nations. But this is no substitute for ongoing and sustained international leadership. I urge him to bring forward a comprehensive, detailed and serious package of measures with international partners, as I have outlined. And finally, Mr. Speaker, the government must now develop a much more strategic approach to its engagement with the Chinese government. We support his view that a constructive relationship remains essential. But it is also clear that the UK needs far greater strategic independence in order to speak from and act from a position of values. Will he provide an updated assessment of the implications for national security of the involvement of Huawei in the 5G network? And will he make a similar assessment in relation to the planned nuclear projects involving CGN, Bradwell in particular? I remain deeply concerned, Mr. Speaker, that while this announcement is to be welcomed, his counterparts at the Treasury see Chinese investment as a central plank of the UK's recovery, and that the government's approach remains deeply confused. For too long in relation to China, we have had no strategy at home and no strategy abroad. I hope he can give us a commitment today that this marks the start of a very different era.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Honourable Lady for her support for the action that we're taking on Hong Kong and indeed the measures that we are introducing in relation to BNOs. She made a number of points and lamented the lack of a comprehensive strategy. I'd always be welcome to hear any particular suggestions she's got. I didn't hear any specific suggestions that weren't covered in my statement, but I'm happy to keep engaging with her. She asked about the details of the BNO offer. Of course, the Home Secretary will come forward and in due course, as appropriate, and set out all of those details before the House of Commons. Obviously, there will be all sorts of regulatory arrangements we need to put in place, but the contours of the offer are very clear. We welcome BNOs to come to this country. We say that we've got a specific historic responsibility to them, and there won't be any quota. We are in relation to her question about numbers, we of course constantly assess the likely take-up. think in reality, a large number of those that might be eligible will want to stay in Hong Kong. Others may go to countries in the region, but we've got a historic responsibility, and therefore we're making our position clear. And I've also had a number of conversations with our international partners, particularly those with with specific and close relationships with Hong Kong, and who have large members of that community in their countries. And I would expect others to be looking very carefully at what they do. She asked about the Magnitsky legislation, said it was promised 2 years ago. It was in the manifesto in the 2019 election. I've been very clear we'll come to the House before recess, not just with the legislation, but the first designations. She also asked about Carrie Lam and representations that have been made to her. Andy Hayne, our Consul General in Hong Kong, spoke to her in the last 24 hours to express our objections to the new legislation. The Foreign Office's Permanent Secretary will also summon the Chinese ambassador to reiterate the points that I've made before the House. I can tell the House that I spoke to Foreign Minister Wang Yi for a considerable period of time on the 8th of June, obviously trying to make clear in advance, in order to try and avert this outcome, our strong objections to the nature of the legislation. The Honourable Lady also mentioned extraterritoriality. It is a feature, she's right to note, in this legislation. It's not entirely clear how that will be applied in practice, but it is another sobering cause for concern, and I'm joining with her in expressing that. Finally, she asked about Huawei. She will know that the National Cybersecurity Centre are reviewing the situation in relation to Huawei and 5G in light of US sanctions, and will report in due course, and I'm sure that the House will be updated as soon as that review is finalised and concluded. But above all, Mr. Speaker, I would like to say to her that it's an important moment across the House where we agree, frankly, on the strategic point that we all wish to make, which is that there has been a clear and serious violation of the Joint Declaration, that we must honour our obligations to BNOs, and also that we must work with our international partners to build the widest caucus and coalition of like-minded countries that say not just on the issue of Hong Kong, but also on the wider question of trust, that China must live up to its international responsibilities.
Chair of the Select Committee, Tom Tugendhat.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I first of all welcome the bipartisan nature of this discussion and the fact that both sides so clearly agree that this is a violation of the Sino-British Joint Declaration. May I also welcome hugely not only my right honourable friend who's here, but my right honourable friend, the Home Secretary's decision to open BNO status immigration rights. This is, as he will know, supported by about 2/3 of the UK people, according to a China Research Group poll which was published this morning. Can I also, however, state that the nature of extraterritoriality that he speaks about has direct implications on our own university sector and on freedom of speech within our own academic institutions, as Chinese students have already been influenced to silence debate and change outcomes here in the UK. Now, this also raises consideration about our own legal system, because as he knows, and as the Shadow Foreign Secretary raised, British judges sit in judgment in Hong Kong. How can they do that? How can they defend civil rights and commercial rights if they are being violated by the very law they are sent to uphold? Now, at the same time, we are watching this spread to other parts. We're already seeing Taiwan is under increasing pressure, as my right honourable friend, the former Foreign Secretary and former Health Secretary, pointed out a little while ago. The removal of the word peaceful for the bringing together of China that was spoken about by the time the Communist Party is 100 years old is a big change. And as one final point, would he join with me and the chairs of the select committees of Australia, Canada and New Zealand and call not just to make a statement at the UN Human Rights Council, but to ask that same council to send a special rapporteur to Hong Kong, because what happens in Hong Kong matters to the whole world.
Can I thank my honourable friend, Chair of the Select Committee, pay tribute to his assiduous work on this issue. He's right to pay tribute to the Home Office. They've done an excellent job with the Foreign Office in working through this issue. I think he's absolutely right to say that we should just be standing up for freedom of expression in Hong Kong, but also within British universities. I've raised this issue, discussed it across government, including with the Education Secretary. I think it is something that we need to be very acutely aware of and make sure that we have every safeguard that we need in place. More generally, Mr. Speaker, I want to repeat, we will look out, and I pay heed to the various points that he made. I should also add, he's right to say that we need to work with the UN. I note the point he makes about the Special Envoy. I hope he would be, I think, reassured by the fact that we have delivered this unprecedented statement in the Human Rights Council with, in total, 27 international partners. It's not been done before. That is a testament to the leadership of the Foreign Office and our diplomatic network. We must continue to do it, because one of the things that we're increasingly seeing is China trying to not just on occasion violate international obligations, but undermine the rules-based international system. It is incredibly important that we work with our partners right around the world, obviously Five Eyes, European partners, to avoid that happening and to firm up the international rule of law.
We're heading and dropping in on Alan Smith, the SNP spokesperson in Stirling. Alan Smith.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I'd also thank the Foreign Secretary for advance sight of his statement, and as far as it goes, I agree with it also. The joint declaration was signed by Margaret Thatcher on the 19th of December 1984. A couple of years before that, the then Foreign Secretary, Lord Carrington, after the invasion unilaterally by Argentina of the Falkland Islands, resigned, describing the action as a humiliating affront. Now, the UK is a guarantor, not just a party to this agreement. The UK is a guarantor of the rights of Hong Kongers, a guarantor of one party, two systems. And Beijing has ripped this treaty up in the Foreign Secretary's face, in full view of the international community. No amount of shiny new planes can disguise the fact that this is a humiliating affront, both for global Britain and for the Foreign Secretary personally. Now, on the substance of his statement, the one point of note about accelerating BNO passport holder status, I agree with that and I support that. But I would point out that when the West Berlin people were threatened by the USSR, the international community didn't offer them safe passage out. The international community worked a bit harder. And it's good that the European Parliament, at least, has been active in its defence of international law, passing just on last Friday a very strong motion urging that the EU should lodge an action in the International Court of Justice against China to hold it to account for its breach of international law. It is remarkable that the European Parliament and the European Union is rather more active in this than the UK has been. So on concrete points, will the Foreign Secretary commit to join this action in the International Court? And I welcome his words on the Magnitsky legislation, but it has been a long time coming. Will he now finally open active consideration of targeted sanctions against China and Chinese companies active within the UK? Because it's quite obvious only internationally concerted action will bring China to account, and it's quite clear they pay global Britain no heed whatsoever.
Can I thank the honourable gentleman? It's always a pleasure to be lectured by the SNP on Margaret Thatcher. But we actually, amidst all the differences that we may have, I think agree on the fundamental points of principle at stake in relation to our commitment to BNOs and the people of Hong Kong. He said that the EU would be more active than the United Kingdom. It's just nonsense. But we do welcome the fact that the EU, which has different views amongst member states in relation to China and the specific issue of Hong Kong, are being more active. I was in Berlin recently to meet with my French and German opposite numbers, and one of the issues that we've worked together on, including within the G7, is making a clear position on Hong Kong as made. We will continue to work on that. It's incredibly important that it's not just a small minority of Western states making this point, because that is what China will seek to ignore, and that is why we've tried to expand as broadly as we can, as we did in the Human Rights Council just yesterday. I wasn't entirely clear what beyond proposals the government has already indicated it will take he is actually suggesting, but if he does in due course want to come back with something specific, I'd be very happy to consider it. In relation to Magnitsky, these were proposals of the Conservative Party in our manifesto, and just back in December we will be passing the relevant SI before summer recess with the first designations. I won't speculate or preempt what will be in those designations.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canada today has updated its Hong Kong travel advice to their citizens, stating you may be at increased risk of arbitrary detention on national security grounds and possible extradition to mainland China. Will the Foreign Office be changing our advice, and can he assure me that we, along with our international partners, will continue to speak out against this violation of Hong Kong's autonomy?
Can I thank the Honourable Lady and welcome all the work that she's done on human rights. I think she's right to draw attention to the specific issue of extraterritoriality. It's not clear, given the opaque way in which it's drafted in the national security legislation, how that is intended to be applied. We will take a very close look at it. We keep our travel advice under constant review, and I hope she's had the positive reassurance, given the statement made by 27 members in the UN Human Rights Council, that we are working actively, energetically with all of our international partners to be very clear that China must live up to its international obligations when it comes to the people of Hong Kong.
Mr. Carmichael.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Foreign Secretary for advance sight of his statement. The Foreign Secretary's statement will have been heard not just in this House, but in Beijing also. And I hope that in hearing that statement, they understand that the analysis that the Foreign Secretary has laid before the House today is not just the analysis of the government, but of this House as a whole. When you see reports of young Hong Kongers as young as 15 already being victims of this law, he must surely understand the importance of making sure that no Hong Konger is left behind in relation to the BNO passport arrangements. I very much share the disappointment and frustration of the Foreign Secretary that things have reached this point. But surely all countries and all institutions must understand that this is a moment where we have to pick a side. Either you can be on the side and stand with Hong Kong in the joint declaration, or else you choose to stand with the Chinese Communist Party. And in that regard, what will he do to urge the Hong Kong-Shanghai Banking Corporation and also Standard Chartered Bank to reconsider the decision they took in relation to taking the sides?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I thank the Right Honourable Gentleman for his, I think, very judicious remarks, and I certainly welcome the substantive points he made. He talked about the importance of this House, not just the government, speaking with a united voice, and I have to say, Mr. Speaker, that's exactly what we've had today on the key issue at stake, and I welcome his contribution to that. I also agree with him. It's heartbreaking to see the scenes in Hong Kong just hours after the enactment of this national security legislation. We are counselling the Hong Kong authorities and Beijing to step back, but it's clear, having enacted this legislation, that they wish to proceed. We will need to wait to see the precise application and enforcement of this action before deciding some of the measures that we might take next, but these are under active consideration, including with our international partners. I took the point he made about BNOs. The full details will be set before the House by the Home Secretary, but we're very clear with our commitment to provide a path for citizenship to all BNO, eligible BNO status holders, that we will do the right thing by all of them. Mr. Speaker, on HSBC and banks, I thank the Honourable Gentleman. I've been very clear in relation to HSBC, and I will say the same thing in relation to all of the banks. The rights and the freedoms and our responsibilities in this country to the people of Hong Kong should not be sacrificed on the altar of bankers' bonuses.
Thank you,
Mr. Speaker. Can I welcome every word of my Right Honourable Friend's statement and the bipartisan nature of these exchanges? Can I invite my Right Honourable Friend to take up the Honourable Lady for Wigan's appeal for a long-term strategic approach to China? What can we learn from the disastrous mistake of the government just a few years ago, who thought we were embarking on some new golden era with this dictatorship? Can I draw attention to my Right Honourable Friend, the Chancellor of the Duchy's comments at the weekend, in which he said, foreign policy making is often weakened by the lack of deep knowledge of the language, culture and history of the nations whom we seek to influence. Why has this been the case, and what can we learn from it, and how will the government now embark upon a big, comprehensive, sustainable strategic review on our relations with China, involving not just people within the government, but people beyond the government and other nations?
Foreign Secretary.
Can I thank my right honourable friend and the chairman of the Select Committee? He makes a range of important points. I would just say on Chinese expertise, I don't think the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster was referring to the Foreign Office. In any event, I can reassure him that we have some of the finest Mandarin-speaking diplomats around the world, and we are exceptionally well represented in Beijing by Her Majesty's Ambassador, Dame Barbara Woodward. We are increasingly across government looking at all aspects of our relationship with China. Obviously, the House is interested and will know about Huawei. The honourable gentleman referred, the chairman of the Select Committee, I think he's not in his place anymore, referred to the situation in universities, and he rightly raised the question, as did in fairness the honourable lady, about an integrated strategy. Clearly, as we bring forward the integrated review, China's role in the world and our relationship with China will be an absolutely essential element of that, and that's work that's already underway.
We're heading to Scotland to visit Dr. Philippa Whitford. Dr. Whitford.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. China's national security law completely undermines previous agreements on the status of Hong Kong and those who live there. It is a threat to judicial independence and freedom of the press, as well as political, civil, and human rights. With Huawei's ties to the Chinese state, instead of a long, tedious review of the 5G contract, will the government not take a stand now and cancel it?
Can I thank the honourable lady? I certainly share her views on our responsibilities to the people of Hong Kong and our concern about their treatment. In relation to Huawei, as I've already said to the House, given US sanctions, it is currently under review by the National Cyber Security Centre. We'll come forward with our response in due course.
Randall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This morning I read an English translation of this disgraceful law, and I see in Article 38 that it extends the law to any offences committed outside Hong Kong by non-Hong Kong residents. So further to my honourable friend's point, can my honourable friend press the point with China that UK visitors to Hong Kong and China will not be facing prosecution for acts that they may have said or done while in the UK?
My honourable friend is absolutely right. We are concerned about that provision. It's not entirely clear how it will be applied. It has already been raised with Carrie Lam by the Consul General in recent over the last 24 hours. We will be expressing our concern, and of course that is something that the entire international community and tourists and visitors from all over the world will be concerned about, which is why it is so detrimental, not just to Hong Kong, not just to the international community, but also to China itself.
Heading to South Yorkshire to visit Sarah Champion. Sarah Champion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The UK has benefited from Hong Kong for 155 years. We have a legal and moral duty towards them. It just can't be right that a Hong Konger protesting peacefully for rights that we bestowed on them 23 years ago could now end up in jail for life. I really welcome what the Foreign Secretary has said about BNO passport holders, but can he speak a little about what he would do for the human rights of all Hong Kongers in Hong Kong, not least because last year his department funded China £500,000 from foreign aid specifically on human rights?
Can I thank the honourable lady, Chair of the Select Committee, and share with her concern about what's going on in Hong Kong, but also welcome her support for the position the government's taken, and she joins members from all sides of this House in doing so. We're obviously deeply concerned about all aspects of this national security legislation, and we'll do everything we can to encourage the Chinese government to think again. I think we need to be realistic about it. In relation to BNOs, clearly, as you will know, there are close to 3 million eligible BNOs and over 300,000. I think the offer we've made is right, given the responsibilities that we've made. Clearly, we're concerned more broadly about the residents of Hong Kong, and that's a conversation that we rightly are having with our wider international partners.
Thank
you, Mr. Speaker. Can I first welcome the Foreign Secretary's statement and the decisive action being taken. Unfortunately, this follows a catalogue of actions being taken by the Chinese government to undermine international law. So could he confirm, when the Chinese ambassador is summoned to the Foreign Office, we'll be bringing up not just this awful legislation, but also that catalogue of actions, and making clear to the Chinese government that it can no longer be business as usual?
Here, here.
Well, can I thank my honourable friend? I think he's absolutely right that we will raise our concerns in relation to the national security legislation right across the board. The Permanent Secretary will do that with the Ambassador. Our Consul General has done it with the Chief Executive. I had close to an hour with Wang Yi, the Foreign Minister. I think it was the 8th of June, as I previously said to the House. And of course, we talk about the full range of our relationship. We want a positive relationship with China. There are all sorts of opportunities there in relation not just to trade, but also climate change and COP26 coming up. But what we cannot do, whether it's in relation to our national security or our values, is look the other way just because of its asymmetric power, think that we have to kowtow or have to duck or bow. We will not do that. We will not do that on the issue of Hong Kong, and we will not do that wherever else our vital interests are at stake.
Let us go and visit Geraint Davis in Swansea West. Geraint Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week, as the Foreign Secretary knows, the European Parliament decided to call for the Magnitsky sanctions on officials who abuse human rights to be applied, to call for China to be brought before the International Court of Justice, and for the United Nations envoy to Hong Kong. Will he now take the lead in these issues, bringing with us European nations, Asian and the United States? Or is he content to sit on the sidelines when we have a special interest in championing the democracy, the human rights and the rule of law in Hong Kong?
Can I thank the honourable gentleman? I think he's a bit confused. The European Parliament doesn't have, and the EU doesn't have, an autonomous human rights sanctions regime. The United Kingdom will do by summer recess with our first designations. We would certainly, and we're engaged in the conversation with our European partners, the honourable gentleman is shaking his head. He's just not right about that. But we are engaged with our European colleagues to encourage them to follow suit and take this step. He raised a range of other issues, which we were, of course, very happy to look at. But I would just draw his attention to the statement in the United Nations Human Rights Council, an unprecedented statement with 27 states signing up to make clear our concerns in relation to human rights on Hong Kong, but also on Xinjiang.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I salute the outstanding leadership being shown by my right honourable friend on this issue, and indeed the superb leadership being shown by Dame Barbara Woodward as our ambassador in Beijing, one of our most difficult posts, and we are truly lucky to be led by a diplomat of such calibre there. The basic difference is that we believe that freedom of expression and peaceful protest supports social stability, whereas the Chinese government thinks it undermines social stability. When you look at what's happening in the rest of the world, it has never been more important to stand up for those values. So could my right honourable friend tell the House what other steps the Foreign Office is taking to support freedom of expression and media freedom across the world?
Can I thank my right honourable friend and pay tribute to his work on the issue of media freedoms, but also in relation to China and Hong Kong. This has been a long time coming, and we've tried to prepare for the best, but we've hoped for the best, but we've been prepared for the worst. He's right to pay tribute to Dame Barbara. It is a difficult posting. She's performed exceptionally well. And he asked in particular about media freedoms. He will know that, because it was established under his tenure rather than mine, that we have a media freedom campaign which we lead along with the Canadians. We are swelling the ranks of that. It deals with support for countries that want to protect media freedoms, but it also provides support for journalists. We have also a campaign to protect freedom of religious belief, and the third element of this will be the Magnitsky sanctions regime, which I'll bring before the House with the first designations before the summer recess.
Heading to Scotland again with Margaret Furry. Margaret Furry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Foreign Secretary tell the House what discussions the Foreign Office has had with NGOs operating in Hong Kong who will likely be targeted as a result of this new national security law?
I thank the Honourable Lady. Look, we obviously have contacts with civil society on the ground through our missions and posts, but also through direct contracts here in London. They are deeply concerned, and they fear that they will be subject to this law, and they will bear the brunt of this law in the harshest terms conceivable. We are deeply concerned for them, which is why we've taken the action we are.
Now comes the gallant member for Beckenham, Bob Stewart.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
I served in Hong Kong as an army officer. But the great thing about Hong Kong is it's got one foot in China and another foot in the West. And when you're looking at financial services, that is a huge advantage to the people of Hong Kong. Now we have a situation where this law will put this position where many people will consider withdrawing money out of the Hong Kong money markets and the financial services there, possibly to Tokyo or Singapore, or maybe to Shanghai. I wonder if this is also a little gambit by the Chinese authorities to reduce the money-making influence of Hong Kong in the world.
Can I thank my honourable friend? The reality is, he's right that Hong Kong has long been regarded as the jewel in the financial crown. Of course, its relative economic importance has ebbed over time as China has economically developed. But the reality is that the steps that have been taken are clearly counterproductive by China's own self-interest in economic terms. And what we are clearly seeing is China put the political imperative to control Hong Kong and other so-called restive provinces of China over the economic interest that it has. In any event, frankly, regardless of the financial circumstances, there is a point of principle at stake here, based on their freedoms, their autonomy, and the commitments under international law that China has signed up to. It must, if it wants to be a leading member of the international community, live up to the international responsibilities, the international obligations that it undertakes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That action is announced for BNO passport holders is welcome, but actually does nothing to bring China to boot. The reality is Global Britain is so weak regards China because it's reliant on CGN for nuclear, it's reliant on Huawei for 5G. If he wants to prove me wrong, will he rule out any future deals with CGN for nuclear power stations?
I say to the honourable gentleman that the open investment culture that we have in this country constantly needs to be kept under review. We've seen it with Huawei, and of course we'll look at it in other areas. But the reality is it is also a source of this country's strength. So I do not accept for a second his suggestion that Britain, being an open and outward-looking country welcoming investment, is somehow the reason for what's happened in Hong Kong. And he shouldn't let China off the hook. It is China's, and he said from a sedentary position, Brexit. I mean, it's ludicrous to blame what's happening in Hong Kong on Brexit. The honourable gentleman should not let China off the hook. It is China's failure to live up to its responsibilities that is at fault here and is at stake here. And it's important that we've got unanimity across this House on this critical point. Otherwise, the truth is, we just weaken our message in Beijing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and may I also add my welcome to the Foreign Secretary's statement and his decisive action, and to the Shadow Foreign Secretary, Right Honourable Member for Wigan, and I fully endorse her idea of a UN Special Rapporteur as a way forward in tackling with Hong Kong, because the people of Stoke-on-Trent, Kidsgrove and Torquay were shocked by the actions of China upon our friends in Hong Kong. And so I would like to ask, does my Right Honourable friend agree that now is not the time to allow the Chinese government-funded Huawei to have access to our mobile networks, and instead we should be backing local and regional solutions here at home, such as the Staffordshire 5G connected growth deal?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I take many of the points he makes. I share the concern of his constituents. I think the issue we've got in 5G is, frankly, a longer-term issue where we have failed to provide the diversification of supply, which allows us to rely on high-trust vendors rather than high-risk vendors. That matter is now, as he knows, in light of US sanctions, currently under further review by the National Centre for Cyber Security, and will come to the House when that's thoroughly been looked at.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I saw reports this morning that the prominent young activist Joshua Wong is now removing himself from politics, taking a step back. What assurances can the Secretary of State give us that this government will be doing everything it can to protect young activists in Hong Kong like Joshua from being arrested and disappearing?
And I thank the Honourable Lady. It is very sad to see his movement be disbanded for fear of the consequences. I share her concern about that, and I welcome her support. We've obviously taken the step on BNO because that gives us the opportunity to provide sanctuary to those that feel that they cannot stay in Hong Kong. Many will choose to stay, and we will work with our international partners to convey as effectively as we possibly can to China and consider all the potential actions that we might take next.
Dr. Liam Fox.
Mr. Speaker, can I thank my right honourable friend for both the content and the tone of his statement today, because it's a cause of great sadness that we have just witnessed the death of one country, two systems, with all the implications that that will have internationally, something that will be shared across the IPAC countries. Hong Kong is still the entry point for much of China's inward investment. Has my right honourable friend had the chance to assess what the disregard for international treaty law that we've seen today will have for the security of international investments in Hong Kong, which are still so necessary for the social stability and prosperity of the Chinese people?
Can I thank my right honourable friend and agree entirely with his sentiments as well as the specific points he made. And of course, I think as well as the people of Hong Kong, but investors and other people who might wish to visit Hong Kong and who ordinarily would have done will be looking very carefully, not least given the extraterritorial elements of this law, as to what it will mean. At the very least, above all the points that have been made in the chamber today, it will risk a further range of uncertainty for businesses and for finance into Hong Kong. And as I said, that must be counterproductive, not just for the people of Hong Kong, not just for those investors, but for China itself.
Heading up to Yorkshire with Barry Sherman. Barry Sherman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I recall my first visit to Hong Kong to the Secretary of State when I was part of the parliamentary delegation, to our shame, that went to Hong Kong and assured the Hong Kong people that the Chinese would stick to the agreement. I'm very angry about this morning, but could I remind him, what I've learned about China over the years, it is a ruthless communist dictatorship. It despises and hates democracy, and it is worldwide busy undermining these democracies. And like all dictatorships, it cannot be appeased. And if we don't take action in trade, in investment, and really hit them where it hurts, we will not be able to stop this tiger growing more and more ferocious.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I agree with him on the concerns he's expressed? I don't think he should feel personally bad about the commitments he made. We all shared that hope that China would live up to those responsibilities. What we're making clear is that even if China fails to live up to its responsibilities, we, one United Kingdom, including the Honourable Gentleman, will live up to our responsibilities to those BNO passport holders. I take his point about the wider threat from China. Of course, given its size, its economic asymmetry, I think we need to think very carefully with all of our international partners how we proceed. We do not want to have a poor relationship with China. We want a positive relationship with China. One thing is clear, though, we will not duck issues like human rights or our values or issues that touch on our vital national interests.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the Chair of the Select Committee referred to earlier, a recent poll by the China Research Group expressed strong support for extending the rights of BNO passport holders to come to the UK, and I welcome his statement with that regard. They also expressed very strong support for sanctions. 80% of the people who expressed a preference felt there should be travel bans and asset freezes for Chinese officials who are responsible for this legislation. Is that something that's under consideration?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Honourable Gentleman for the points he's made. It is right that the public support this, and on the scale that the public support, given the issue, I think it is remarkable, a tribute to the open-heartedness of the British people and the sense of history and responsibility. He raised a range of other issues, clearly trying to tempt me down, giving him a foresight into what may be in the Magnitsky legislation, which is coming. He'll have to wait a little longer, but it will come before summer recess.
We're now heading up to Scotland. Let's go with Martin Day.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We've already seen dozens of individuals arrested since the passing of the law, many if not all of whom solely for their political opinions. Is the government aware of any BNO passport holders having been arrested? If so, how many have been? And has it made specific representations to the Chinese authorities on their behalf? given that many of them could face life in prison simply for their opinions?
Can I thank the honourable gentleman? I don't have a detailed breakdown of how many either BNO passport holders or BNO status holders have been arrested at this point in time. Of course, the legislation has only been in place for a day, but we have made representations more generally on the national security legislation. And of course, one of the features, even before the changes that we make, of BNO passport holders is that we can exercise consular protection on their behalf in third countries. But I think the most important thing at this stage is to proceed with the changes that we've made and to be very clear that the United Kingdom will be able to offer sanctuary through by means of a route to citizenship in this country.
Andrew Mitchell. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I very much welcome what my right honourable friend has said about the Magnitsky proposals upon which he and I worked together in the past, and also very much welcome what he said about the new rights for BNOs. In dealing with China, we should always champion our values and never trim on that. But will he make clear to the Chinese regime, and will he reinforce with them, that wherever possible, we seek cooperation and not confrontation?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank my right honourable friend? He's absolutely right, and he has long-standing experience, of course, when he was DFID Secretary of State on the relationship with China. It is double-edged. There are opportunities as well as risks, not just on trade, but in climate change, which he will have known given the strong development angle. I think he's absolutely right to say that we want a positive relationship. We do not want it to deteriorate or to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. We're very clear in our approach to China on this, but equally when it comes to issues of values, human rights, and international obligations which go to trust and confidence, not just in the United Kingdom having trust and confidence in China, but in the world and the international community having trust and confidence in China. China must live up to its word. China must keep its international obligations.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The offer to BNO passport holders and to those eligible is the right, decent and thoroughly British thing to do. But those people and the Chinese government must be convinced that this offer is not theoretical, it is absolutely real. So I wonder if the Foreign Secretary would set out practical steps that he will take to make sure that those who arrive in the UK are welcomed in our society and in our wider communities.
Can I thank the honourable gentleman and the right honourable gentleman and say that I totally agree with the sentiments. It's all very well to put the processes in place. I've set out the framework for it. But we need to be very clear that we will embrace any BNOs that come to this country. We understand the ordeal that they've been through, and frankly, the Chinese and the Hong Kong residents that live in this country make an incredible contribution already. And I know that any that come as a result of these changes will continue to do so.
Speaker. Can I join with others in strongly welcoming the decisive action of the Foreign Secretary today in creating a bespoke route to citizenship of those people from Hong Kong for the BNOs and their dependents? But will the Secretary of State reassure me that he will continue to take our unique responsibility to those in Hong Kong deeply seriously, and that he will continue to stand on the side of all of those who are seeking democracy and freedom?
Hear, hear. Can I thank my honourable friend? I absolutely share. I absolutely agree with the point she's made. As I said, not just taking this up with the authorities in Hong Kong, but also with China. I spoke to Wang Yi on the 8th of June for a considerable period of time, and we raised this in the Human Rights Council. More generally, the three pillars of our approach to media freedoms and freedom more generally are media freedoms that we're taking forward in leadership with Canada, the freedom of religious belief, which has now an international caucus that we're trying to swell the ranks of actively, and the Magnitsky legislation, which is the third pillar, and where we will be bringing forward the legislation before the summer recess.
Let's go and visit Dave Dugan in Angus. Dave Dugan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. We heard yesterday from the Minister for the Middle East and North Africa that the UK government has made it clear to Israel that they oppose annexation and the UK regards it as a contrary to international law. Yet the Israeli government pays no heed to the UK in this matter. So how does the UK government intend to be less ineffectual in its protest with the Chinese government over Hong Kong? And can the Home Secretary confirm what steps will the UK take with international partners to coordinate an international and collective response to this indisputable and flagrant breach of the Sino-British Joint Declaration?
Honourable gentleman, I didn't hear a proposal, a specific proposal of what he would like us to do that we're not doing, but can I just say to him that in addition to all of the things that we're doing that I've set out before this House, we are actively working with our international partners. He will, if he looks, he will have seen that in the G7 Foreign Minister statement that we've previously put out, in the Five Eyes statement that we put out when the decision was taken to proceed to enact the law, and in the statement made in the UN Human Rights Council by 27 different states proposed and led by the United Kingdom.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What has happened to the people of Hong Kong is chilling. In one sinister moment, their rights and freedoms have been swept away. These are rights and freedoms that perhaps here we take for granted too often, but which we must defend to the hilt. So will my right honourable friend reassure the people of Hong Kong that it is not only the British Parliament that stands alongside them, but the British people who stand alongside them? And will he therefore make it very clear that Britain will do whatever it takes to make the Chinese understand they cannot behave in this way without consequences?
Secretary. Honourable friend, and he's absolutely right. It feels to me that from the various interventions and the points that have been made in relation to the polling that's been done on this, that we send out today a very clear message to the people of Hong Kong. We stand with you as a government, as a House and as a country.
And returning to Scotland with Owen Thompson. Owen Thompson.
Mr. Speaker, anyone who cares about freedom of speech must be gravely concerned about the criminalising of dissent that this security law represents, and concerns are also heightened by growing evidence of the appalling atrocities being committed by the Chinese regime against the Uyghur population. Does the Secretary of State agree that now is the time for an independent investigation and to support the creation of a UN Special Envoy or Rapporteur for Hong Kong and also the people of Xinjiang, who will have a special responsibility for monitoring the human rights situation on the ground?
Can I thank the honourable gentleman? I certainly share his sentiments, and he will have seen that the statement that I referred to various times in relation to the Human Rights Council over the last 24 hours was in relation to Hong Kong and Xinjiang. I think he needs to be, if I may say so, realistic about the likelihood of China ever accepting a rapporteur or an international investigation being allowed into that area to monitor the facts and the situation on the ground in the way he describes. But that shouldn't deter us for a moment from keeping the international pressure up, and I welcome his statement in that regard.
Fielder Bruce.
Can I thank the Foreign Secretary for his strong leadership on this issue and his very clear focus on human rights, which is, if I may say, after some years of expressing concerns about this as chair of the Conservative Party Human Rights Commission, welcomely refreshing. Can I ask, is he aware that over 50 UN Special Rapporteurs have this week called for a Special Rapporteur or Envoy on Hong Kong? Would he respond to the many calls within this chamber for the UK to take a lead on that in the Human Rights Council?
I thank my honourable friend and pay tribute to her work in promoting freedom of religious belief all around the world. We've worked in the United Nations. We've raised the issue in the United Nations Security Council as well as in the Human Rights Council. We'll do everything we can, and I'm very open to the idea of a UN Special Envoy. I think we need to be realistic about what that alone might achieve, but I think as part of a wider approach which keeps every lever of pressure available on the Chinese government to think again, I think it's something important that we should look at.
29 withdrawn, so we'll go to Steve Double.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Can I very much welcome the Foreign Secretary's statement today and very much thank him and the Home Secretary for their action on BNO. This action by the Chinese government has been roundly condemned. Does the Foreign Secretary share my view that this is the time for all countries who are committed to peace, freedom and democracy to come together and make clear to the Chinese government that this action is likely to prove counterproductive in the advancements of their own international interests?
I thank my honourable friend. He's absolutely right. And one of the challenges we've got as China exerts all of its economic and diplomatic leverage to sway those to either support it or to stay quiet on these issues is to make sure that people understand quite, and other countries understand quite what is at stake, which is why in the way I framed this, it's important not just to talk about the human rights, the autonomy of the people of Hong Kong, but this quintessential issue of trust. Trust in China's ability to keep its word when it has freely given it, as it did through the joint declaration.
Newlands.
Mr Speaker, John Major said before the handover, if there were any suggestion of a breach of the joint declaration, we would have a duty to pursue every legal and other avenue available to us. So can the Secretary of State tell the House what avenues the Government is pursuing to respond to the National Security Law which dismantles the One Country Two Systems law, and will it consider lodging a case as a signatory to the signing of British declaration to the International Court of Justice?
Can I thank the honourable gentleman? And he's not the first person to raise this issue of the ICJ, but as honourable members may or may not know, you cannot submit a case to the court unless it's under the compulsory jurisdiction of the court without the consent of the other side. It's very clear that China would not accept it. I did raise the issue of third-party adjudication with my Chinese opposite number. It's very clear that they will not accept that. So there is not an easy adjudicative route, but I hopefully give him the reassurance that we have already looked at that very carefully.
Traian Duncan-Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I commend my right honourable friend for his statement and for his clear leadership, and even his leadership in the UN, and particularly on the Magnitsky arrangements that he intends to bring forward. Can I, however, remind him and others that for China, they think that Hong Kong is collateral damage that they can happily sweep to one side. The truth is they see themselves in an ideological battle about how government should be formed, and they dismiss the rules-based order of the West. They've made that very clear, and they have a strategic view on this. So does he not agree with me? It's time, therefore, for us to bring the free world together, to say to them not just to complain, not just to get rapporteurs, but also to say it's time to hit them in the one place that China worries about, which is its economy. We have run to China to buy goods and to invest. It's time for us now to review every single programme here in the UK and around the free world. We learnt a lesson 80 years ago about appeasement of dictators. Maybe that should be applied today.
Can I thank my right honourable friend and grateful for his generous remarks. He's absolutely right to point to the importance of shoring up the values that we hold dear, the values reflected in the United Nations in the multilateral system. And I think it is right to say that what is at threat here is not just individual obligations in relation to the people of Hong Kong, but a wider question of China trying to recraft the rules of the international system. And it will only take concerted effort with our international allies, Europe, North America, but actually much more broadly than that, which is why the G7 statement in support on Hong Kong was so important, to make sure that we can shore up the multilateral system and the international rule of law.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I also thank the Secretary of State for his statement. I fully understand and appreciate his deep concerns. The Minister is well aware of the Chinese systematic suppression of religious beliefs and human rights towards communities such as the Christians, the Uyghur Muslims and Falun Gong. Indeed, just this week here, China has initiated the sterilisation of Uyghur mothers to prevent them having children. Does the Minister share my concern that this will allow these abuses to take place in Hong Kong, and how can we prevent this from happening?
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I share entirely his outrage, frankly, at the reports that we've seen and what's happening in Xinjiang and indeed in Hong Kong. The reality is, given China's economic size and indeed its military size, is that what we've got to do is focus, as my right honourable friend mentioned, on swelling the international caucus of like-minded countries who understand what is at stake here. It's not just the issue of Hong Kong, as important as that is, but it's the rules-based international system and the values represented within it.
Dr. James Davis.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Does my right honourable friend agree with me that if China is to be treated as a leading member of the international community, it must adhere to international law?
Can I thank my honourable friend? It's exactly the issue at stake here. We recognise China's economic strength, potential growth, and also the opportunities for China to be a force for good in the world on things like climate change. But with that status, that role as a P5 member of the Security Council, it must show leadership, and that means living up to its international responsibilities, and that means adhering to the international commitments it made, in particular in relation to the Joint Declaration.
I'll go to Lewisham, to Vicky Foxcroft.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I've been contacted by a number of constituents who are worried about the safety of loved ones in Hong Kong. What guidance is the UK Foreign Office offering to British nationals living overseas in Hong Kong? And when does the Foreign Secretary expect the BNO passport holder visa rights extension to be implemented? Now more than ever, the UK must fulfil its commitment to the people of Hong Kong.
I thank the Honourable Lady and say that the full details will be presented by the Home Secretary in due course. We've set out the parameters of the offer, the bespoke offer that we're making to the BNOs in relation to any of her constituents in Hong Kong or family members that may be worried. I would urge her to look at the Foreign Office travel advice, which we keep constantly under review.
We now go to Bexley Heath to Sir David Evanet.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I strongly support and welcome my right honourable friend's statement today. This is really a sad day for Hong Kong and all of its people. Does my right honourable friend agree that the new national security law, of course, is hugely detrimental to the people of Hong Kong, but will also do great damage to China and its reputation? We must therefore continue to be robust in our responses on behalf of the people of Hong Kong, as he has outlined.
Can I thank my honourable friend and just say that I totally agree with him. It is a deeply sorrowful day when we look back at the opportunity, the potential, the success of the vibrant community, business and social in Hong Kong to see it come to this. He's right that it should inspire us to redouble our efforts to work with the international community to try and safeguard the rights of the people of Hong Kong, and in any event to make sure that they can come to the United Kingdom through the new offer that we're making to BNO passport holders.
And now we go to Glenrothes, Peter Grant.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. While it is clearly tempting to look at the potential financial benefits of increased trade and investment with China, as the Honourable Member for Strangford reminded us a few minutes ago, this is a regime that is committing acts of brutal violence against its own people, including credible accusations of genocide against its own citizens. Does the Foreign Secretary accept that the desire to increase the profits of British businesses and to increase the wealth of British citizens cannot be allowed to overcome our revulsion at the evils being committed on our fellow human beings by the Chinese regime right now?
Share that sentiment, and that's exactly the policy and the measures that we've set out in the statement I've made today.
Now we go to the Isle of Wight, to Bob Seeley.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Foreign Secretary and the Home Secretary for their very welcome support for BNOs. Would the Foreign Secretary agree that this dreadful law is proof that China has changed? And I hope he sees the clear agreement in the House that we need a new strategic approach to this communist dictatorship, and not just a naive hope that China will change into what we want it to be. We were slow to prepare for the new authoritarianism in Russia and now China. Will he take the feelings and the sentiment that he's heard today from the House on Huawei, on other issues, on board? Thank you.
Can I thank the honourable gentleman? I certainly always pay very close interest to the remarks he makes on China. He follows it very closely. He's right, we've got special responsibilities to the BNOs. We look at the relationship right across the board, every aspect of it, through the National Security Council, in the Foreign Office, and more broadly across Whitehall. I personally do not agree with the Cold War analogy that he has provided. I think both the opportunities but also the challenges that China presents in the 21st century are different. They're different partly as a result of technology and things like cyber, and partly just the unique nature of China as a country. We want a positive relationship. I do not want, and the government does not want, a bad relationship to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. But what is equally clear, and I can reassure the honourable gentleman, my honourable friend, is that we will not do anything that imperils our vital interests, and we will not lie down and sacrifice our values for the purposes of trade, commerce, or anything like that.
Jamie Stone.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Could I also welcome the Foreign Secretary's statement, and indeed the thoughtful manner in which he has responded to questions this afternoon. It is a very British characteristic to make the Hong Kongers welcome when they come to the UK. Part of the welcome will be adequate housing, adequate health services, and all sorts of other issues that are devolved to the devolved administrations. Can I seek reassurance from the Foreign Secretary that Her Majesty's Government will consult and discuss fully with the devolved administrations how these Hong Kongers can be given the most welcome, best welcome possible?
I thank the Honourable Gentleman. I totally agree with it. We obviously need to consult with the DAs on any significant measure like this which comes into force. We will do that. I know the Home Secretary will do that. I also think one of the things that will give a fillip to the people of Hong Kong in a very dark day will be the statements of support right across this House from all parties that we stand with them. And they will know when they come here, if they come here, when they come here, that we support them, we value them, and that we understand the plight that they're fleeing.
And finally, Sarah Dines.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank my right honourable friend for his statement. As we have heard, the first arrests have already been made under Beijing's sweeping new powers for offences all of us here consider to be basic freedoms. Those arrested face life imprisonment, sham trials, no jury and an executive-appointed illegitimate judiciary. I thank my right honourable friend for all the work he has done. I ask for his assurance that he will continue to keep us updated here about what he's doing at the Human Rights Council and about false imprisonments and the poor sentences and the numbers of arrests so we can really lead the international way in this field.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I will certainly update the House as regularly and as consistently as we can, based on the data that we can reliably glean from what's going on the ground in Hong Kong. Our Consul General, as well as Her Majesty's Ambassador in Beijing, our Consul General in Hong Kong, is doing an exceptional job, quite difficult circumstances. The number one thing, though, is that we will need to work with our international partners to try and alleviate the situation as best we can. And that is why, that come what may, we need to make this direct, clear, unequivocal offer to the BNOs, which is what we're doing today.
Thank you. In order to allow the safe exit of honourable members participating in this item of business and the safe arrival of those participating in the next item of business, I suspend the House for 3 minutes.